So I saw this really funny post on LinkedIn by Jacob Horn. He is the chief security evangelist at Summit 7, right? And there's this really funny post that actually he had commented on earlier this week, where basically it was like DoD contractor or something. He was complaining, saying like all this, CMMC stuff is coming out of left field, and it's way more expensive than the government thought, said it was going to be, and like this is going to make all these SMBs go out of business, which is kind of maybe a separate topic. And it was something like, his response was something along the lines of like, well, the security stuff's been here forever. This whole like NIST 800 171 stuff has been around forever. I should say DFARS array has been around forever. The stuff that's new is like the external CMMC audit, right? That is basically supposed to validate like the stuff, the security, or not just security, but a lot of these security controls that these DoD contractors should have been doing for a long time now. And actually, the real reason that the CMMC seems to be really expensive is because all these DoD contractors are like waking up, realizing that they haven't done any of the security stuff that they should have been doing for the last many years now. And so now they're getting hit with the reality that, wow, I need to be doing MFA for the first time, Intune for the first time. I need to be migrating to a GCC or GCC high tenant for the first time. I need to invest in compliance for the first time. And so all of it seems really expensive.
Yeah, I mean, that's a story that we've heard many, many times with customers that we speak to. Basically, they get hit with this news one day that they need to go and get either SOC 2 or CMMC or ISO 27001, and it all of a sudden becomes this massive priority within the company, but they've been neglecting security and just having their stuff together for so long that they're starting at 0 when they should be starting at 60-70%.
Yeah, totally. It's funny. Like I was talking to this DoD contractor, and they were on GoDaddy, like they were buying Office 365 via GoDaddy, and currently, and have, I guess for many years now, have been working with ITAR controlled data. Which is like, it's hilarious because it kind of goes to the whole point of like why CMMC is important in the first place, is because unless the federal government is mandating these things, literally every single one of these, businesses in the defense industrial, complex is not going to be doing anything around security until it's mandated, right? Like, to think that they needed to migrate away from GoDaddy, and their perception was, hey, I need to move to a Microsoft commercial tenant. And I'm like, you need to be going to a GCC high tenant if you're going to be working on this. And they had no idea what that was, right?
Which is incredible. The fact that they've been operating like this for so long, and it isn't until now that they're starting to get things in place. Unfortunately, what we oftentimes find is that it's not only a shock to them in terms of how much they need to get done, but this also affects the amount that they're going to have to spend on it and a lot of other things that are going to impact the whole organization, where they may view it just as this security compliance type of issue. But no, dude, this is going to affect the whole organization.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be doing MFA. Everybody's going to be signing their stuff up into Intune, and that might change the workflows and the ways that people do things on a regular basis.
Right.
And so there's like a culture shock that's going to have to come as a result of this too. So,
yeah. There's this other company that we had talked to. They're working with Boeing for the last 20 years. And obviously all these companies they realize the government's going to do something about it. But they came to us and they said, I've been working with Boeing for 20 years. I have all these contacts, all 100 of my employees are essentially a subcontractor for them. They're not going to take my contract away just because I don't do CMMC. And we're thinking, you want to take that bet? But why risk it, right? And they know that they're on their next round of contracts that CMMC is going to be mandated at renewal, essentially. And basically, their whole idea was that it's going to be fine. The government's going to either roll back the date, or they're going to bring down the requirements and not make it so hard. And I said, okay, that's interesting. And then towards the end of the call, they said, but Boeing did give me a security questionnaire. I was like, oh, okay, interesting. You don't think they're going to be very serious about it, but they're going to give you a security questionnaire, right? And it turns out that all the answers on their security questionnaire that they were going to give to Boeing were false. They couldn't prove any of the stuff that they were actually doing. They actually weren't doing any of the stuff. And essentially their perspective on this was, but don't worry, Boeing's not actually going to check. They're just going to like look at this and review my answers from this Excel spreadsheet, and they're not going to care.
Which is one of the reasons that the certification is so important, because you're having a third party go and review this and take a look at your systems to actually go and verify that this is what you actually are doing. And so I think there's like this crucial distinction here between the audit itself, right? Paying for the CMMC audit, which is an additional cost. You go through a C3PAO, it's going to be an additional cost. It is more expensive than a SOC 2 or an ISO 27001 audit, for example. And realizing that that is a separate thing, which is really where you're just putting the stamp on everything that you should have been doing already. Mm-hmm. And so I think that any organization, once you're just getting off the ground and you actually start to get some good customers and things like that, should be thinking about security. And I think that's part of the problem, is that a lot of times they just keep growing. You get these new contracts and it's fine. No big deal. Nothing bad has happened yet. We're still operating. But it's this realization that you should be building and investing in your security all the time, because you're a modern business who's doing business with, you know what I mean? Like you have a company and you're touching data of other companies, and in some instances, companies that do very important stuff with the government, right? And like you have a responsibility to be good stewards of that data and make sure that you're operating in an ethical and secure way. And that's essentially what that certification is doing at the end, is being able to say, we are independently verifying that you're doing the things you're supposed to do to be a trustworthy person to do business with. Yeah. That's what that is.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be a surprise. It should be something that you're constantly building towards, and maybe you got to, make some adjustments and tweaks and stuff to basically adhere to the framework and the particular criteria that they want to see. But the idea is that you should be doing this always. This is always something that you should be doing and thinking about and investing in, because of this, the nature of your business. And that's really where the problem comes up. So yes, it's a lot of work. Yes, it's going to be expensive, but you're viewing it from 0 to 100 when you should conceivably be going from 60, 70 to 100, right? And so the magnitude of the problem and the cost is actually not that much. This is something that you should have been paying, and now you're paying for it.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
What's your perspective on, Cindy here at BMO was talking to me yesterday about this. Is she was saying, I really think that most of these companies aren't being so proactive because they see this as like an executive order, like many of the different executive orders that presidents in the past have put into signature that end up not coming to fruition. And so Cindy's perspective was like, I used to work at and you'd have to go sit on all these calls and stuff about all these executive orders and how you have to go, be compliant with all these things that in 6 months or 9 months from now never ended up getting put in play. And so she was kind of saying like maybe a lot of these companies are seeing this as an executive order where it's just not going to be there in 6 months, 12 months with the new administration. So I'm going to take the risk of not doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's an understandable position, but where I would push back on that is that, again, there is a difference from completing the certification process and going through the audit versus doing the things that framework is based on to begin with, which is making sure that you're adhering to a particular level of security standards, right? There's no way that you could be able to tell a company that, you don't have to think about MFA, or you don't have to worry about, password vaults. You don't have to think about policies and procedures, onboarding, offboarding, any of that stuff. There's just no universe where you'd be able to say with a straight face that, that stuff is just executive order talk, right? Yeah. It's like, that's all stuff that you should just be doing anyways. Yeah. And sure, maybe the mandate for this to become the final piece of the puzzle, that might change. We'll sort of see how that goes. But the whole underlying reason for that is the whole idea that I hear you to objective security. And so you should be doing that always. That's not just executive orders and who's in office or any of the changing of the guards or anything like that. It's like, regardless of that, you as a business owner who's touching data and doing business with entities that, play into the defense industrial complex, like that's just something that you should be doing.
Yeah. What do you think the first step for these DoD contractors should be, right? Like if you think from 100% is getting a score of 110 and you got your piece of paper, to 0 being you're on GoDaddy still. You're still on GoDaddy. You're still on like a G Suite or Microsoft, commercial tenant. What do you think the first step is?
The first step I tell everybody, whether it's CMMC, SOC 2, ISO, whatever, is first you got to identify your gap. And so to be able to identify your gap, I mean, you could come and talk to someone like us. You can go and talk to an auditor. You could whatever. But what you first got to do is identify, where am I today versus where am I trying to go? Because there's no way to put in place any sort of plan unless you know exactly what that gap is. Some people may be coming in and they just have to tighten up policies and certain things like that. Other people may be coming in and they're still on GoDaddy and they got to get to Microsoft first before they do anything. So in order to really know what you got to do first, you just got to understand how far am I from where I'm trying to go. And from there, you're able to determine, okay, here's the list of, let's say, 50 things that I got to do. Where am I going to start to prioritize based off of level of importance, time that it takes to actually implement this, and so on and so forth. But the biggest thing is just identify the gap. So
just
that's always the first step.
Go on ChatGPT and say, download the compliance controls for like NIST 800-171, and you're going to go find like a list of 200 things that you're going to have to go do, and it's going to become very evident whether you know the exact answers or not from the very beginning. It's going to be pretty evident whether you're like 20% of the way or 0% of the way or 80% of the way, right? Just by taking a quick glance at quick Google search or ChatGPT.
Yeah, and I mean, if you for a fact know that this is going to affect you, and let's say for CMMC, for example, you're going to have to do the level 2 with a see-through PAO. In that case, I think that you have a very strong business case to invest in a compliance automation platform that has CMMC as a listed framework, and make that purchase and start plugging in your stuff today. Because you can go and look at just the general requirements and get a feel for it, but being able to plug in your actual infrastructure and get an objective baseline reading based off of one of these compliance automation platforms is going to be a huge lever and something that you're going to use throughout your journey there. I cannot conceive a modern organization trying to go and get a CMMC level 2 audit completed without some level of compliance automation platform to assist them with that process. It's not...
What do you think? What's your take on all these like self-assessments? All these people saying, "Oh, I'm good. Like I'm gonna pass. Like I've already self-attested and I have a score of like 80."
Yeah, I mean, I think even if you're trying to go the self-assessment route, those platforms are still very helpful, because it's very difficult to know for sure if you're doing the right stuff. A lot of people think that they are, and in reality, you go and look under the hood, and they are not as good as they think that they are.
Right.
And so I think if you're taking it seriously, you just can't rely on self-assessment. You gotta have some measuring stick to be able to objectively look at where you are.
Something that isn't just like, trust me, bro. Don't worry, I did the test myself and I got a really good score, right? Something, whether it's it's an auditor, an internal auditor, external auditor, an MSP, or whether it's even a GRC platform. Anybody to kind of have a second look and say, I don't think so, buddy. Like, you're not as far as you think you are.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too, because I think just naturally, due to the nature of the position or the nature of the department, a lot of budgeting exercises. I mean, we're coming into budgeting season right now for 2026. And IT, security, compliance oftentimes get the brunt end of the stick, when in reality, that is, if we look at the cost of a tool like a Drata or a Vancer or what have you, let's say that for a under 100-person organization, I mean, that might be 20, 25K or something like that on a yearly basis. Now, if you go and look at what marketing and sales and all these other departments are spending in terms of their tools, right, that is really small in comparison. And so part of it is just being able to say, like, this is integral to our business. We should be investing in tools to help us out with this, and it's not unnecessary spend. I think that that's part of the problem as well with some of these compliance frameworks, people having to pass these audits, is that they just don't view it, and we've done episodes on this in the past, they just don't view it as being a business driver. It's more of like, I have to do this thing, and this and that. But I mean, even if you're going the self-assessment route, I think that one of these platforms is beneficial because of its ability to cut you down on time, be able to do things like vendor risk, do security questionnaires, all of that. Like it's just a modern tool.
Why do you think that many of these contractors haven't done any any of the security, like, do you think it's like, I'm going to give an example of like I don't know, a company that makes a bunch of aluminum T-bars, for example. Like, there are a bunch of machinists. There's like 50 people in a warehouse with, creating lots of sheet metal and, stuff like that. Like, why do you think that companies like that, like, haven't made any progress?
They don't feel like they have to, right? I think that a lot of it is just, it's not going to happen to me. I'm just over here manufacturing these T-bars.
Sure.
Right? Why would somebody target me, or why would somebody try and go after my data or stuff
Right.
like that? It's
So, like, why does the government care that I have to go get this piece of paper? Why do I have to go get this piece of paper? I'm just creating T-bars, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of
Yeah.
that. It's just this feeling like it's not really that relevant to them, and a lot of times, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, these types of companies are oftentimes started by folks from previous generations who may not
Yeah.
have, much experience or knowledge about IT and infrastructure, and the extent of their infrastructure is really that they got some laptops for guys on the floor,
Yeah.
maybe some tablets. And they seem to function pretty well. So like, what's the big harm, right? It's a lot of like handshakes and I trust you, and
Yeah.
this is sort of it's a culture at a lot of these companies, and they never felt like they really had to.
Yeah.
And so they've been in business for 20, 30 years, and it's never been an issue before.
Yeah.
So why would it be now? And I think that's part of it.
What do you think happens, next year when all these new contracts get awarded and it turns out that, I don't know, maybe only 2,000 to 3,000 of these companies end up with their CMMC level 2 certification, and like thousands more either don't have it or they're backfilled or waiting for the internal auditor, right? Like, they haven't had the piece of paper. Like, do you think that a lot of these like primes are going to essentially take away these contracts from them during this next cycle? Or do you think they're going to say, hey, we're going to give you another pass. 2027 will really be the year that we really care. But for this year, we'll just give you kind of like a slap on the wrist?
That's really hard to say. I mean, I'm very interested to see what happens, because as of today, we really don't know what the result is going to be. I mean, there's a lot of people who are taking it very seriously and they're working on it now, and we talk to them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people equally who we talk to who are like, we'll just sort of play it out and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the ripple effect is going to be from all of this, but at some point we need to cross that bridge of there's got to be some
There are
level of
consequences. Yeah. Yeah. Like, there's got to be consequences. Otherwise, like, nobody's going to take it seriously, right? Yeah. Yeah. The big question is, like, does that happen this next fall? I don't know. I have a feeling that, it's going to be like something like 1% to 2% of this entire market is going to get it done next year. And honestly, it's going to be like end of 2027 that ends up being the really big year for, GRC platforms, auditors, ourselves, the MSSPs that do the GCC, the Microsoft GCC implementation. Like, I think until enough of these people have like their friends at who are also, CEOs of other companies get contracts, or like either lose out on bids or contracts get taken away from them, that's going to finally be the wake up call of like, I have a story from someone who had been working with whoever, Raytheon, for the last 20 years, and it finally got pulled away. So I don't know. I'm really curious as to how that happens. I'm also really curious as to if you're on the other side and you're, you are one of these big primes, is there enough alternative substitutes in the market that you can take away a contract from someone who isn't CMMC and give it to someone who's CMMC? Or is it that there's just like there's only 1 or 2 contractors that exist in the United States who can do this line of work?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, stuff's got to get built and shipped, and yeah, I mean, it's an interesting scenario to think about. If there are no options, then what do you do? Because this is the mandate, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Just last week, I had spoken to a company that we've looked objectively at the contract value attached to frameworks like SOC 2, CMMC, etc., and it was north of $20 million per year.
Whoa.
And they currently do not have any sort of MDM solution.
Sure.
They are still using Microsoft Business Basic, for example. They have been targeted for cyber attacks before.
Right.
And they've been successful. And all of these factors, right?
The attacks were successful.
The attacks were successful,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, they eventually, neutralized the threat, but they were successful at going and doing things. And all of these factors put together, we're looking at 2026 and the plan, and essentially the case was brought to leadership about why they should be investing in security and compliance, particularly with the end goal of completing a successful CMMC level 2 audit by the end of 2026. And the leadership team basically said, well, we're doing okay so far and nobody's threatening to leave us now, so we're just going to continue as is. And when we look at the actual work that needs to be done to get them from where they are today to that, you're looking at a good 12 months of work to get them to be audit ready.
Right.
And so in cases like this, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next year when reality hits and they're basically looking at a start date and knowing that there's a 12-month process for them to hit this. So I think that there's going to be a lot of cases like that where people are just saying, it's not going to be important or it's not going to affect me. We'll see what happens. And it may, in a very real way, affect their revenue and the contracts that they're awarded or their contracts that renew with them.
Yeah.
And if there are alternatives, then the prime is going to select the people that give them less fuss, right? They're going to say, well, hey, you don't have it, and they do. So we're going to go with them. And I think there's going to be a lot of shifting dynamics as a result of that next year.
Yeah, some people at BMO were saying that there might be some consolidation within the CMMC market, kind of like what we're seeing in just the MSP market in general, where, there's just so many players in the field now. It's a very mature market, and the only way to make all these people grow is by having private equity come in and buy a bunch of MSPs together. And some people at BMO are saying that maybe the same thing will happen with the defense space, where especially since it's something like 90+% of these contractors are probably SMBs, right? And they're either not going to be able to afford to do the audit, or perhaps what will happen is there's going to be one company that already achieved the audits, and company B doesn't have, hasn't passed the certification, but only they can do the work. And company A has a certification, but they can't do the work. And so they're just going to end up buying company B and saying, don't worry, we already passed the audit. You can essentially use our audits. I mean, obviously they're going to buy the company. And then that's how a lot of this will scale, is maybe the medium-sized players or the private equity companies will start merging some of these together and kind of getting the operational efficiency from a security compliance perspective.
I think that's certainly a possibility, for sure, that's going to occur. I think that what also might be a possibility is that if the company really wants to use another company for whatever component of what they're doing, they may, within the contract, allow a additional amount of contract value to be allocated towards that company achieving it.
Sure.
And a grace timeline for them to achieve it. Different milestones, basically as a way to kind of take them by the hand and say, we really want to use you guys, but you're not where you need to be. So here's what we're going to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you got to get there somehow.
That's the piece that I'm most interested in. I'm like not really convinced. I don't know. I think it can go either way. I think the federal government will figure out sort of, do we have enough contractors that have the work, that can do the work that we need them to do over the next, 1, 2, 3, or 5 year contract period. And if they don't exist, if they exist, then I think during the next, selection process, they're just not going to respond back to the bids that don't have CMMC. But they're not going to tell the person who bid that, oh, we passed on you because you don't have CMMC. They're just going to stay silent. And I think those companies they're just going to be like, oh, wow, I lost, maybe in previous years I had won 2 to 3 contracts and that helped run my entire company, right? Paid for everybody. But maybe now I only won 1 contract instead of 3. And so now I need to lay off 30% of my company. But you were never told that you lost the contract because you didn't get CMMC. So I think that's sort of the is that how it's going to play out? Or is it going to play out with what you're saying, which is, all right, we're going to give it to you, but there's going to be milestones as to, you need to have an attestation letter from a C3PAO that you were engaged with them. You need to have a GRC platform, which, I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out next year.
Yeah, I think the people that are getting hit the hardest by this are the very small players.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a conversation a while back with a company that was maybe 5 people.
Whoa, okay. Yeah.
And in the contract they were being sent, they were saying, hey, we need you to adhere to this framework and so on and so forth. And they're basically starting from zero with regards to security and all of that stuff. They literally have things in the people's house in a spare bedroom, right? Like it's very, very, very ground level, right? And there's just, they do not have the cash flow today. Like this would be their first big contract.
Yeah.
And they just literally don't have the cash flow to justify anything like this. And so I think that's where it's going to hit them the hardest. And so part of the recommendations for them was like, hey, I mean, you could look at this different ways, right? If you really feel like this is going to go good for you and you feel like you have a very necessary product, then I would go to them and try to negotiate the contract to be able to fund that on the front end for them to be able to use your product. If not, then you should be looking at a loan in order to get this done. And if that's not an option for you, then I
don't know.
Unfortunately, it's not going to work,
Yeah.
right? So it has sort of put different businesses in precarious positions because this is not something that is cheap to go and do. The audit itself is tens of thousands of dollars, and
if you're not on a low end.
On a low end, yeah. So it's I think that there is some discontent around that across many organizations where they almost feel that this is discrimination to a certain extent of only certain companies are going to be able to really do this correctly.
Yes. The answer is yes. And I know that sounds unfair, but yes, absolutely, right? I mean, it's anytime any company does anything related or any, compliance, I mean, it can be anything, right? It could be like you are a member of a country club and the country club increases their annual fees by $20,000. Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to afford the new price. Yes, you will no longer be a member of this country club. That is correct. Right? Like, and then it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I guess to your example, it's almost like saying, well, I want to be a doctor, but medical school is too expensive.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's what it takes if you want to.
Yeah, I think all around in life, like that's just kind of how it is. Even in the MSP world, like if you're in the Microsoft world, Microsoft every year, like to go get their, advanced specializations and certifications and blah, blah, blah. Like they say, here are 5 new advanced specializations. You need to have 10 people go complete these. It was 5 last year. That's correct. It was 5 last year. And then, end of story, right? Like, you got to keep up with the times, right? And I think that's, it's like that in many industries, and it will always be like that forever.
What we're going to be seeing is really just a restructuring of the defense industrial base.
Yeah.
And overall, that will be a net positive because there's going to be more objective standards, security protocols, and so on and so forth. But in the process, it's going to be difficult for...
Yeah. I mean, when I see all of these companies that I talk to that literally do not have the most basic security controls, like, I'm talking like really basic, like they're not using any email security tool at all, right? There's no Barracuda, there's no Defender for Office 365, or not using MFA on anything, right? No MFA, right? It's just my Office account on GoDaddy, right? It's like, guys, like, it's not even like you're pretending or trying here. Like, you guys aren't doing anything. And obviously it's always going to be more expensive for a company of like 5 people to do those sorts of things, right? But even once you get to like 20 employees, your company's making real money. So like you can do something. Sure, maybe you can't do all of it, but your Microsoft 365 licenses, for Business Premium or whatever the GCC equivalent is not crazy, right? It's going to be in the $20 to $30 per user per month kind of frame. And obviously you need someone to be able to go implement that, right? Like that's not cheap. Like you might not have the internal resources who knows how to like go deploy those things. But in any case, I don't know. I don't feel so sorry for it. I feel a little bit of sorry for the people who are like under 20 users where it's like really expensive and all that. But once you're above 20 users, like I don't really feel for you anymore. Because I think like you do have the resources throughout the company to do something, right? And you are actively choosing to just prioritize something else, right? It's the same thing when someone says, oh, I'm too busy, I don't have time for that. Every single human on the planet has the same, 24 hours in a day, It's just, yeah, you don't prioritize it for whatever reason.
And to add to that, it's not like this is coming out of nowhere. I mean, this has been discussed. The CMMC
Yeah.
2.0. I mean, this has been discussed for the past 2 years. I mean, it's not coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
This is something that's been going on for a while.
Let me look up. When was DFARS 7012 established? And a quick Google search says December of 2017, or the deadline was December 2017. It was first established in October 2016. Dude, that's almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like this stuff is not coming out of nowhere, right? It's like if things, aren't mandated or like nobody's, checking, then yeah, people aren't going to do it, right? But like again, a lot of these like prescriptive security controls have been around for a long time, and it's only now that the government is like, okay, we're actually going to like crack down to see if you've been doing it or not, and like suddenly everybody's getting caught with their like pants on the ground, essentially.
For sure. I mean, this wasn't going to be a surprise. This was going to come eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that every organization just has the responsibility to invest in security. You were in 2020, we're in 2025, almost 2026. I mean,
yeah,
you gotta at least meet the baseline controls, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just be moving around out there without any sort of security controls implemented anymore. I mean, you gotta be.
To me, obviously, like we represent an MSSP, so obviously we're gonna have this like security and compliance bias. But like, I feel like this isn't even really about security and compliance anymore. It's about like overall like digital transformation, or like it's more generally just like, are you actively innovating on your business over the last 20 years? Like you still have stuff on-prem. Obviously, some companies might actually have a very legitimate reason to have stuff on-prem. A lot of companies do not. Stuff on-prem, no CRM, their websites from the 90s. And so and obviously that has nothing to do with security and compliance, but like overall, I feel like a lot of this stuff is just like, are we actively improving as a company? And every company, whether it's from a security perspective or having a modern CRM or having a modern website or having a modern like financial tech stack, it's all sort of part of the whole thing. And this is just a mandate. It's almost like a check-in as to like, have you been modernizing? And suddenly everybody's getting caught like, actually, no, nobody's been modernizing.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it too. I mean, at the end of the day, the businesses are going to succeed that are innovating and staying with the times, and
like forever, right? The S&P 500, those 500 companies have never always been the same 500 companies. They switch, they go around, new entrants come, old companies die off, right? And this just seems like part of the natural cycle. And it seems more to me to be about the natural cycle of just business and modernization as it is, or I should say, compared to this like random arbitrary like we're putting up new fences that you can't, we're being a country club and we're saying that we're increasing the entrance fee. Like it doesn't really feel like an unfair entrance fee that is suddenly coming out of nowhere to kind of to make a bunch of contractors go bankrupt. This is more like a check-in to see, have you been doing anything to modernize your business, and you're not complying with the 2025, 2026 standards of what it means to run a business.
100%. So if anybody is listening to this that is part of this, what should they do next? If they're listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I mean, I am in that camp. I know that I've been doing bad.
Yeah.
I know that I should be taking this seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is like educate. Like, obviously, educate yourself. I think there's a lot of people that, you should be going to go follow. I think BMO's a great example. I think Summit 7's a great example of people to go follow. Redspin's a great, people to go follow. Prevail is a great company, as well as all the auditors, right? Go follow A-Line, right? I think there's just the first thing is go follow all these people, start seeing what everybody's saying online and be part of the conversation. I would probably also reach out to a couple people and have intro conversations with. I think go talk to a MSSP, go talk to a GRC vendor, go talk to a internal auditor, a external auditor, and just get everybody's opinions, right? Obviously, we're going to be very opinionated about the Microsoft 365 tech stack and the Vanta and the Dradas of the world, because that's what we live and breathe every day. And clients come to us and they're on commercial tenants and we're like, oh my God, like you need to move to a GCC tenant, you need to go, do all these things. But like you're going to go talk to an external auditor and they're going to give you a very different answer. They might even say, oh, wow, BMO is talking way too much about the security stuff, right? Very possible. I think go talk to a bunch of different vendors that are related to this space and see what everybody kind of has to say about where you are from a gap assessment, from a timeline perspective, and get a bunch of different opinions. Because there is, I would say, like while we're trending towards a typical response, I think we're not all quite there yet. Everybody still has kind of like their own opinions, especially since the CMMC framework is so new and there's not many customers that have completed the certification yet. So there's still sort of a lot that's sort of like to be determined. But I think as of right now, I would go talk to a different bunch of people and I would start looking at, simply, probably then migrating to the government or, versions of several of your softwares, I think, right? So like go talk to a bunch of people, get some sort of gap assessment done and start your technology, transition plan to those government-related softwares and infrastructure that you need to get done.
Also, because we're in the season of budgeting, I would definitely be a voice within those conversations and say, hey, this is something that's coming up for us, and it may necessitate unforeseen expenses based off of what we have today, and be able to get leadership on board with the fact that there's going to be money that has to come from somewhere. Because, yes, you could go and find the gap, and you're not going to know the specifics around a lot of these things. But it is good to just plan that this is going to cost you additional money. There's no way around it.
Right.
Even just from the audit perspective itself. And that's one of the things that these different vendors can help you with, us included, is to be able to look at, hey, you're currently not using this tool, that tool, this, etc., and be able to come up with a general ballpark estimate of the amount of money that you're going to have to spend on this, because it is going to have to come, and you want to get in that conversation earlier rather than later.
Yeah, and I think maybe the last point to end on is like thinking back to that company that was going to lose like $20 million or potentially could lose $20 million worth of contracts. Like, I don't think the answer is, wow, this is going to cost us $300,000 a year because we're doing absolutely nothing or on Business Basic or GoDaddy today and we're really doing nothing. The answer is don't do nothing. It's not like an all or nothing thing where it's like, all right, we need to do absolutely everything. We need to go buy Vanta. We need to go buy M365, GCC High. We need to go do all these things. Like, there's always a middle ground. Great. Maybe you're right. For your business, like you're the CEO of your business. You know better than I do. I'm just an MSSP. I don't know all the intricacies. It sounds like you might lose this $20 million worth of contracts, but maybe you're right. Maybe you won't. At the same time, though, don't continue the path that you're on. If it does come up, you're going to be a lot happier by saying like, okay, we already took some baby steps. We have implemented MFA across the company. We have migrated to the Microsoft, GCC version instead of the commercial version. So at least we're on there. At least take the steps to slowly modernize the IT infrastructure so that if it ever does come down the line, you're like 50% done, 60% done. And you're not then caught in 18 months from now, still at zero, and now you also have the contract removed. Like, that would really suck.
And to what I talked about at the start of this episode, it's not just about passing the audit.
Yes.
Even though the baby steps will help you if you do have to go through the audit, you should still be taking the baby steps even without the audit.
Yeah.
Because the audit is there just to prove that you're doing the things that you should be doing.
That you should have been doing, yes.
So you should be doing them anyways.
Yeah.
And so even if you know that you don't need to show this piece of paper, at the end of the day, there's certain things that you should just always be doing in
you still,
modern business.
Even without the certification, even without the mandate, you should still be doing it because you don't want someone impersonating some person in accounting that then wire transfers $20,000, random hacker. That happens all the time, right? Like, you still don't want that types of stuff happening, right? And so a lot of the things that are in CMMC are also like related to that. That's just general like hygiene as a company, right? And it's like, you don't want those things happening. You don't want your employees clicking on phishing emails that then gives access to the hacker, who's then going to have your entire distribution list and email all of your clients, right, and spam all of your clients. That's going to ruin trust with your customers and your partners. You're going to feel like an idiot. You're going to feel, more than anything, you're just going to feel embarrassed, right? You're like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Like, they spammed like 500 of my clients. Like, I'm an idiot. It's like all those little things that, like, you should take the baby steps just because you don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, I like to think of compliance as like the trust layer of things. And maybe a helpful analogy will be security is me knowing that the locks on my house work. Compliance is about hiring an inspector so that if I have Airbnb guests that come and stay at my house, I can show them that they're safe to sleep there, right? So the whole idea is that the security practice should be in place anyways. The compliance piece is just to verify that for the people that you do business with, even though you knew that you're doing it fine, right? Yeah. So you should still have locks on your doors, right? Yeah. It's not, well, I just have the doors open all the time and until I get somebody that wants to stay here, then I'm going to go and do it, right? It's like, you should probably be doing that all the time.
Because it's the right thing to do.
Right. It's the right thing to do, right? So think of compliance as the trust layer. Trust is about the relationships that you have with other people. Security is just about doing the right things all the time anyways, because you should.
Yeah.
So